Hello, and welcome to today's Your Author program. My name is Lauren Spector, acting senior librarian for the Memorial Branch of Los Angeles Public Library, and I'm here with my colleague, young adult librarian Lorena Villegas from the Cypress Park Branch. Before we get started with the program, I want to remind everyone here to sign up for the LAPL Summer Reading Club, or Summer Reading Challenge, and our LA Bio Blitz Challenge. You can stop at any of our open branches and pick up our game boards. Here they both are, sorry. And when you register and pick up your game board, you can also get this awesome bookmark with a plantable seed bomb on it. Oops, mine just fell off. And the completion prize when you finish is this awesome bandana with artwork from Jose Ramirez. So sign up today at lapl.org/summer. So on to today's program. It is our pleasure to host the Your Author series today. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, and any questions that you have at any time. We will try to save time at the end to answer some of those. And also, please email the ecdept@lapl.org to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a copy of Bedazzled by Ryan Sala. Just put in the subject line, Your Author, Ryan Sala, Bedazzled, in order to be in the opportunity drawing, sorry.
We want to thank our generous donors, first of all, the Lenore S and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund and the Library Foundation for helping the library bring these amazing authors and illustrator programs to all of you. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting young adult author Ryan Sala. Ryan's books have been recognized by Tor.com, NPR, Entertainment Weekly, among other publications. He has been featured on podcasts such as Write or Die, The Wrong Cat Died, and The First Draft, talking about anything and everything, ranging from his writing career to the musical Cats. Ryan currently lives in a creaky apartment in New York City filled with craft supplies and costumes, but only takes up the corporeal form to watch Sailor Moon and attend brunch. Remember, those attending the virtual program will have an opportunity to win a free book. And welcome, Ryan.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
We're so happy to have you.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
So, Ryan, let's just get right to it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your novel, Bedazzled? We would love to hear you read a passage from the book. And where did the idea from the story come from, and what was it influenced by?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to do those things in that order. So first, a little bit about me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm a young adult author. I live in New York City, and writing is like my whole world, and doing library events is like my favorite thing ever. So being able to sit and chat with librarians and library patrons, like that's like my dream. I've missed doing events so much. So it's great to be back. Let's see, what else can I share about myself? I'm a Pisces sun and moon. I'm single. My mom would want me to let everyone know. So if anyone knows any eligible gay men, let me know. I have to put that out there. I just turned 30, so the clock's ticking. I have to get married so that I can be someone's hot ex-husband sooner rather than later, which is my other goal in life besides writing books. And I'm the author of Reverie and Bedazzled. Those are my first two books. I have two more that'll be coming out over the next 2 years. And the thing to know about me, if you're interested in my writing, is I focus on writing books for teenagers about like queer heroes celebrating like their identities and sort of figuring out who they are in really sort of like surreal environments. So Reverie, my first book, was about a young queer kid battling a drag queen sorceress to try to stop her from obliterating the state of Connecticut using dream magic. And that came out in 2019. It took off in a way that I didn't anticipate. It was like a Barnes & Noble YA book club pick, all this other really cool stuff. And it sort of paved the way for Bedazzled, which is my second book. This just came out in 2021 on like January 5th, I think. So it's only a few months old, but or I guess like 6 months. Yeah. Happy half year to Bedazzled. But Bedazzled's not a follow-up to Reverie. It's a contemporary, like sort of coming of age story about Raffi and Luca. Raffi is like a young arts and crafts like prodigy who's basically trying to win a cosplay competition. So if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a really cool term. Definitely look up pictures. Cosplay is when people dress and make costumes to emulate their favorite like heroes, and they usually go to events and show these costumes off. And there's some really, really incredible, very talented people that like specialize and sort of make a career out of this art form. And Raffi wants to be one of those people because he's trying to prove to his mother, who is a really famous artist and like galleryist, that what he does isn't just like, you know, kids play, isn't just costume and dress up in arts and crafts. It's a real thing. It's a real career. And so to do that, he's going to win this cosplay contest, sort of like a pageant at like a Comic-Con type setting. And he's poised to do really well. But then he gets there and his main competition shows up, and his main competition is like none other than his ex-boyfriend, Luca. Who like he didn't know was competing. Like he got Luca into cosplay in the first place, but then they had this terrible breakup, and now Luca is like here across from him, like at this competition, competing with one of Raffi's ideas, and that's the first chapter of the book. Like that's where the book begins, and we go back in time and learn about how they met one another, sort of like what happened, and the book sort of toggles between these two timelines. So as you're learning about kind of the present day, like how they figure out their breakup, you're also learning about kind of what broke them up in the first place. And yeah, that's the book. So do you guys want to hear a little bit of it?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit ahead of time about what I was going to read from this book. And if anyone in the chat has any preference, we have sort of two scenes that I'll sometimes read. One of them's more about like the actual comic book convention, and the other is a kiss. So I think we're going to go with the kiss for this reading. How's that sound? Good. Okay, great. So, and this is, I've done readings from this book before for like recordings, but this is my first like book event reading, so bear with me. And just to give you guys some context, in this scene, Raffi, who's the main character and the narrator, Luca has like come over to his studio because Luca needed like a new shirt, and basically Raffi is trying to like figure out whether or not the person with him in the studio is like into guys. So this is their like first flirtation and, you know, first contact as it stands. Luca also is a soccer player. I should mention that. Luca stops moving, turning to smile at my back. Then, catching my eye in the reflection of the cabinet, he leans against the table. You like soccer? He asks. No, I say. But you like soccer players? The question catches us both off guard. I decide I have no reason to lie, having just taken in, washed, and clothed this boy after he interrupted me, painting. Finally, I turn to face him. He's closer than I thought. And blushing. He gives me a sort of slick expression, like he knows he's charming. Like he knows he's guilty of maneuvering the conversation into territory where neither of us has control. Fine, yeah, I say. Maybe I do like soccer players. He leans towards me. I watch him splay his hands out and see the shadows carve into the dimples of his shoulders as he leans over the table. I make you laugh, he says. I make you clothes, I say. We will kiss. I know because, like everything else, a kiss is a sum of parts. It began a long time ago at Craft Club, with Luca shouldering his gear as I handed him a bag of gems. Then, at school, the particles of gold soaking into Luca's clothes, drawing from him the dramatic performance he gave me as the faucet poured over his lips. And here the kiss waited patiently between us as I sewed an entire shirt out of nothing, out of the hope that it would keep this boy captivated by me a little while longer, his eyes memorizing the shapes of my fingers as I fed fabric beneath the hopscotch of a needle and into his waiting palms. And now, as he crawls upon the table with me, turning me around to wrap my waist in his arms and my mouth in his breath, the lead up to the kiss ends. It ends with our lips fitted together, my laughter pushed back down my throat to wait inside as I let myself enjoy what I've created. The kiss ends like all of my projects. Amazing and whole, the fragments of many moments joined together to create something entirely alive and real, something incredible out of nothing. Minutes later, we need to breathe. The pause is long enough that we both consider what's happened and what we've created. Have you ever, I begin to ask. No, not with a guy, Luca says. What about you? Yeah, well, only with guys, but like twice. Do you want... I breathe deep, not sure when my next chance will be. I mean, we can do that again if... Okay, but Luca trails off. But what? But I want to keep the shirt on, the shirt that Raffi made him earlier in the scene. Of course, I smile. I lean in. We're kissing again when Luca stops us. Not because I'm like not into you, he assures me. I like the shirt, and I am very much into you, and into this. Okay, Luca, I say. He evades my lips one more time. Not just physically, he says. I think you're cool. I think what you can do is amazing, and I'm sorry if buying you those gemstones at Craft Club was weird. My plan was to get more and give them to you in school, but then we met at the store, and this was dumb luck, I swear. This wasn't like a plot to get in your pants, I promise. I stifle a laugh. He looks down, mumbling now. I just really like watching you work. I like watching you make stuff. Luca, I say. What? He says. It's cool. You're good. You can watch me work later, okay? His arms tighten around my waist. His nerves settle. Mine don't, but I try to play it cool. Is that an invitation? He whispers, lifting my chin towards him. The afternoon sun fills the narrowing space between us with golden light. We close over it until it's just a glowing seam between two things finally joined.
Yay! Thank you. It's such a great scene in the book.
Yeah.
So it's obvious from the book and from what you were saying earlier that you know a thing or two about cosplay. So we want to know more. Do you cosplay? Do you build your own costumes? And what are some of the favorites that you've done or that you've seen at cons before?
Well, you know what? And I realized I didn't answer the last part of the original question, which is what inspired Bedazzled. So this will sort of be a good tie-in to your question here. So a fun fact about Bedazzled, and this is like a not so secret, is that it was inspired by my actual life. I actually did date a super like cute Italian American guy who was really into cosplay, and I was the one that sort of made all of our costumes, and it did lead to like a big fight of ours in a comic book convention when we were working together to like try to make these costumes. And that was actually the thing that inspired me. I called my agent right after and I said, Veronica, I have a great idea for like a rom-com. It's going to be about these like two people that are in this competition for really different reasons, and they like cannot get along, but they have to work together, and also their ex-boyfriends. And now me and this guy, we didn't break up because of cosplay, but like it was a like significant amount of tension for like a period in our relationship, and so that's what inspired the book. But you know, the rest of the book it's all real stuff. I mean, a lot of it is dramatized for the sake of a plot, but the characters in it, Raffi, the costumes that they make, every single thing in the book has some actual bearing with like a real project that I've done. I'm not as talented nor as wealthy as Raffi. He buys a lot of things that I definitely can't afford because it's everything that he does. But yeah, I mean, I love doing arts and crafts. I love making costumes, and I love geek culture, con culture, anime, video games. All of that stuff is like very near and dear to me. So this book is basically just sort of an outward expression of all of my hobbies sort of packaged into a book, plus a breakup that I went through that has now equaled a book that I've like fictionalized and published.
That is so great. I just want to mention to our audience too, because Ryan, we asked him beforehand, but it's packed away because he just moved. But if you haven't visited his website, you have to visit his website, because with his crafting, he actually bedazzled his copy of Bedazzled. And it is amazing. I was like, I want Ryan to come to my house and bedazzle everything, because
I bedazzled quite, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Bedazzling the Bedazzleds was like a long-term joke with readers prior to the book even like coming out. Like they like immediately, all my readers know that I love to like bedazzle things. So they were like, you're going to bedazzle the cover. And I was like, no, guys, I'm not. That would take so long. And then like launch week, I was like, oh, I actually made 6 of these. And like, people, and I like sent them as like giveaway gifts basically for people that had like pre-ordered the book. So I'll try to find it. If I had it with me, don't worry, I would show you, but it is on my site, so you can check it out there.
It is really cool.
Thank you.
So obviously your books celebrate having a queer identity. How do you feel about queer representation in YA books or media in general? And what do you hope for the future for that?
I just hope for more of it. For the longest time, the queer representation was just so minimal that we were sort of expected to be, like grandly happy with like basically scraps. And then what that did, so like, think of it this way, like for the big like advent of YA, like we had the Hunger Games, we had like Divergent, like all of these like big YA titles, like there's not a single gay person in any of them. And I mean, eventually they sort of like pop up and the authors even like retcon their own queer people into them. But like that was all the stuff that I was handed when I was a teenager. Like I was a teen during like the advent of like a lot of that stuff, and not a single gay person in any of it. And so I sort of set out to correct that for myself. I started writing Reverie in high school because I wanted to read a book about like a queer hero that, wasn't going to be like hate crimed within like 10 pages. And that was going to be the whole plot of the book. I wanted to see someone succeed on the basis of their humanity and their queerness, not like in spite of their fact that they were queer. And so I started that, and a lot of people did at the same time. And eventually like we would all meet and become friends because a lot of queer authors had the same idea of like, well, if you don't see the book that you want to read, like you ought to write it yourself, right? And so now I feel really good about representation in the sense that there's a huge range of lived experiences, but also, we have stories that are more on the heavier side that are about like, real issues that the community faces, and homophobia and the things that are very pertinent. But we also have books that celebrate and sort of put a spotlight on like queer joy and victory, like my books, where the characters sort of happen to be gay or somewhere sort of on like the queer spectrum, and that's not necessarily a plot point. It's just kind of a factor in their story, and I love that too. And what I hope for is more, because I think the more we get for like queer representation, sort of the less like pressure is put on each book to sort of represent everything. Right? Like you can't expect Simon versus the Homo sapien agenda to cover the full range of like queer experiences, right? Like Simon is not a paragon for every single queer youth. And he shouldn't be in the same way that like Kane or Raffi, like the characters from my books, like it's kind of one specific story. And so I think the answer to that is that we just need a lot more of it. And we especially need budding and novice writers who are unsure as to whether or not like there's space for them or if their stories are wanted. We need them to believe that they absolutely are, and to finish those books so that they can get published.
Can I just interject really quickly?
Yeah.
I think you're right. Even within this book, Luca's experience as a bisexual teen whose parents don't know for the most part of the book is completely different than Rafi's experience. So even within one book, you have two characters. I mean, we didn't really get into Luca's life very much. It was mostly about Raffi, but I mean, I would like to see maybe something with Luca's point of view and how he goes through high school, which is completely different. Must be completely different.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely different. Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like YA in particular has like really like forged forward with like this whole like representation. Like I feel like YA like authors have done such a good job of adding more representation and diversity in their books. Like I feel like I see it more in YA than I do in adult books, and I think that's amazing.
I think so too. I think YA, like we sort of like we're very demanding of one another too when it comes to like rigor and quality and things like that too. So what you see is the envelope pushed sort of a lot faster, and eventually like I think adult will catch up with these sort of standards that have been imposed in the community that often are, they're not so much standards as they're just like, I think it's like a quality thing. Like we want to see good quality representation of our identities. We don't want to see stereotypes. We don't want to see sort of like cheap shots and like sort of like the trauma pornography that like can sometimes become really popular. And so I like that. And I think that some people are like fatigued by those standards because they're like, oh gosh, sometimes I just want to read a story. But even the stories that are just a story, like Bedazzled is just a story, like it still has to feel real. And that oftentimes like, you can't just drop a gay character into our modern world and have them at no point interrogate what their identity means for their circumstances, right? Like even in the most utopian world, like that's still going to somehow factor in. And so that's sort of what I endeavor to do, where the characters sort of have different experiences, and like we pointed out, like Luca and Raffi, they experience the same story in different ways because of their different circumstances. Raffi's out and proud, and it never once sort of factors into his identity, what it means to sort of be queer, but he has to reckon with it when he starts dating Luca, who's in the closet, and it sort of puts Raffi back in the closet in a way that he's like not ready for. And that's a real thing. I mean, that was a real thing that happened with me, and when my boyfriend was closeted, and we sort of had to negotiate that against also this other weird factor of wanting to like post photos of ourselves at this con, but like couldn't, right? It's like a weird exchange. And so that's all real stuff. I mean, that's why I added it into the book.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think it's great. So I have to tell you, I finished Bedazzled this week, and I immediately started, how do you say, it's Reverie? Is that the right?
Reverie, yeah.
Okay, Reverie. So I immediately started Reverie because I was like, oh, now I have to read Ryan's other book. And I noticed, I mean, I'm not that into it yet. I just started it, maybe like 30 or 40 pages, but it's very different from Bedazzled. I mean, obviously Bedazzled is so like contemporary fiction, like based in reality, and Reverie is much more fantastical. So I just wanted to sort of ask you about that, like, how it felt, to how different it is to write realistic fiction and fantasy, and like, do you have a preference? Like, what do you hope to continue to write? Like, which style, or do you want to do both in the future?
Gosh, I want to do both. I want to do everything. I want to write, fantasy. I want to write more contemporary. I want to do cookbooks. And if I do a cookbook, it's going to also be gay. Like, I really can't do anything that's like, if I wrote a book on thermodynamics, like, also it would be gay just because I'm the one writing it. And so I am not particularly concerned with genre when I think about my next project. I more think about like what I'm interested in and what I want to talk about and the characters that I want to work with. So to give you an example, my next book is horror. I'm writing a horror novel next. And the one after that is probably a like crime noir supernatural thriller, right? Like, and so I'm a little bit all over the place, and I understand it's probably very frustrating for my my poor editor because I want to write a lot of different stuff. But these are all things that I plan to return to as well. Like Reverie is my first book, my first love, and would love to continue that story. And I love writing about magic, and magic is the thing that like I love the most when I'm like watching something. I'm like, half the time if like there's if no one's shooting fireballs or like laser beams out of their eyes, like I'm a little bit bored. So I think I'm going to probably end up doing a lot more in like the world of fantasy and supernatural, just because it's more exciting. But I love contemporary, and I had such a good time writing Bedazzled, and I don't think I'm done with it completely.
I have to say, we just had a question come in from Diane, who said, yes, please write a cookbook. What would the title be?
Oh God. It would be the joy. No, I have no idea. I'll probably think of something in like 10 minutes and then I'll blurt it out. But I have not actually put together plans for a cookbook, but I would love to do something in the realm of cuisine. My mom's a great cook too, so I'm going to make her do all the recipes, and then I would rather do a cooking show. I think that's probably where my strength lies.
You will come up with something. You will come up with something clever. I mean, you and Raffi have such a great sense of humor. You're so witty and quick. I loved it. I loved reading. I mean, he's just so quick with his humor. I loved it. Mm-hmm. So how has the pandemic affected your writing and your creativity? And have you found it harder to be creative? And do you have any suggestions on how to work through some of those difficulties?
So the pandemic was a mixed bag for me, and there are definitely some blessings within it. I mean, I have the fortune of, I was sort of living alone, and I think that could have been tough for a lot of people, but being so connected to like friends and family, like via the internet, I never really felt that. Instead, what I had was kind of a lot of time to focus on like projects, which was exactly what I wanted to do. The pandemic sort of settled in right after I had done a bunch of touring for Reverie, and I really was ready to kind of just like sit in my house and like do arts and crafts as Bedazzled was kind of coming out into the world. And in a weird way, like I kind of had time and space to do that because of the pandemic. And so, definitely wasn't like I mean, it's a very slim silver lining on a global pandemic, but it's not often that we don't get to have any FOMO while like also getting to focus on like the work that we're supposed to be doing anyway. So I chose to view it that way, and got a lot done. It was a really kind of productive time for me, and like very contemplative and stuff. And I'm definitely a little bit weirder on the other end of it, having like not talked with people for like a year and a half, because I'm like by myself and my job is by itself, and so that's funny. You kind of warp in solitude like that, but I found it kind of nice to have the time and space, and to not feel the pressure to have to go out and to make plans and all of that stuff too. Because I'm a pretty social person, but if I lived in the middle of the woods and had nothing to do but like carve wooden sculptures of birds, I would also be happy with that.
No.
I'd be content with that just as much too. I like Raffi. I love projects, and my advice to people, so maybe this is where it sort of turns into advice, is if you're a writer, oftentimes it can be really tough to sort of force yourself to work through a moment of like writer's block, or maybe you're stressed, or maybe it's just not working, whatever the story is. And my suggestion is to switch mediums. Writing is one way to tell a story, but there are many ways to tell a story. So, put down the pen and paper, go pick up some clay and try to make a little monster out of clay, or do like a little like watercolor craft project. Start doing something with your hands where you can sort of see in real time the results of your imagination working through you. And it reconnects the wires between like here and here, so that you feel a lot more like, I think, in control, and a lot more like effective on, impressing the world around you, the reality around you, with like sort of your imagined story. I think that's like a great thing that I learned this whole pandemic was, if I couldn't write something, if I was stressed out, I would pick up sort of a hands-on project, and it oftentimes settled my nerves in a way that I thought it was very therapeutic. And then when I would go write, it would be a lot smoother. And actually a lot of the stuff in Bedazzled, the costumes, in order to write those costumes, I designed all of them. I drew them out. I did sketches of all of them. I labeled like the materials that I would need. I went and found those materials and interacted with them. And that sort of like tactile like connection to the actual stuff that I was writing about was so helpful when actually writing about it.
It reminds me of when Rafi's having a hard time when they're at the competition, and like takes him to where the textiles are, and he's like, you got to feel them, and he feels the leather, and he gets that motivation again.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, that Raffi and I are similar in that way too, where I have to go and sort of sit with things, and once I start interacting with it, even if it's book related, I'll sometimes do field trips around like the thing that I'm writing about, and that oftentimes kind of gives me what I need in order to like sit down at a chair. So writing is not just sitting and writing. It is so much more than just that.
Gotcha. Good.
Awesome. That's such good advice. I feel like so many times people think like, oh, I just got to sit here at this computer until I finish writing X amount of pages or X amount of words. And I'm like, that's such a good idea to do something else with your hands and find inspiration from somewhere else.
Sometimes you're just buffering, right? Your subconscious. Neuroscience backs this up. Like sometimes your mind is thinking through things at like a really deep level, and you're not going to make it go any faster by like sitting there and watching it. So you might as well spend that time doing something fun or productive, and eventually your subconscious is going to spit out the answer to that plot hole, but not if you're just like sitting there being like, hello brain, like, let's go. Like, that's just not how the brain works.
Yeah, too much pressure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, if I was your brain, I would be like, leave me alone. I'm busy.
Oh man. So all of your books so far, your two, and it sounds like your next two, are all written for a young adult audience, which Lorena and I are very happy about, since we both love working with teens and reading teen literature. But I'm curious if, was that a decision that you consciously made that you wanted to write for teens, or did it just sort of happen that way? Or was there something that inspired you to write for that audience?
I started writing for teens because I started writing when I was a teen, and Reverie, my first story, I wrote as a teenager. And so that's kind of where it began. But also, I mean, the fact that like YA gets to take these big, huge risks, these huge swings, and like the weirdest stuff will become popular. Like, I think there's a lot of merit to that. I think we love reading about teenagers, and it's such a fascinating and like important part in like every single person's life. Like your teen years are so formative, and there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why we like stories that are set in that time. I forget who, so I'm going to use their words without attributing them to them, but this is not my thought, but someone once said, not me, someone wiser, that like being a teenager is sort of this really important time where like you can both look forward and backwards, right? It's like the first time in your life where like you've lived long enough that like you have a past that you can sort of look on, you can sort of feel that nostalgia, but also you're at the precipice of like everything else, and you're aware of that, and like it's sort of it's like the moment in time where like you decide like, what will you do with the world? The world is a material, and what are you going to make with it? And that's kind of your first opportunity with autonomy to sort of make those decisions. And, you know, it's no wonder that it's like, you know, in Divergent, it's a bunch of teenagers bringing down an oppressive regime. We've seen that happen in like our own lifetimes, where it's teens that are sort of deciding, you know what, no, I'm about to enter this party, but I don't like the party, I'm going to change it. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. And so I love writing about teens for that specific elasticity of experience. Like there's so much you can do within that realm. And also I think that like we love youth and sort of what people can do during it. And so that's kind of the other reason. I think especially, you know, even if I was writing in like a fantasy world, it's probably still going to be about teens. But I do have future plans for other stuff in like the adult category, maybe even middle grade. But I have so many things I have so many books that I'm on contract for right now that it's going to be a long time before I get to write any of that other stuff.
Well, we're happy that you're writing so much for teens, because
I love it.
We really enjoy them and can't wait to see what comes next from you.
Yeah. So you like to write teen fiction. Are there any YA authors that you like to read, or even adult authors, or do you have any recommendations of what are you reading now? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So, okay, actually, hold on. These are the two things propping up my computer. So what I'm reading right now is Indivisible by Daniel Aleman. This just came out, so I just started it. It's very good. If you're really, it's heavier. It's about a kid who's he lives in New York, and his parents, ICE figures out that his parents are illegal immigrants, and that's kind of where the story begins. And I won't say more about it, but it's great. It just came out. If you like contemporary more on like the lighthearted side, Julian Winters, great author, has like articulated that it's his mission to sort of write these like queer rom-coms that are like in like the queer joy section. And every time I put down one of his books, I am like beaming ear to ear because they just make me feel so good. If you're more on like the fantastical, supernatural, this is not everyone's cup of tea, but I picked it up recently. You may have heard of it, Dune by Frank Herbert. I never read it when, you know, it was when I was younger, and it came out, you know, eons ago. But I know that the movie's coming out with Timothy Shala, whatever, and I'm probably going to see the movie, so I figured I should probably read the book ahead of time. And I mean, the book is very dated, so this is not an endorsement of everything in the book, but I can definitely see why from like a world building perspective. So like if you like Reverie for like the world building, this book has a lot of like really strong bones in the world itself too. So those are the things that I'm reading right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned before that you have a horror book coming out next year. Can you tell us a little bit more about that book?
Yeah, so I can finally talk about this. I had to stay quiet about it for so long, but so the next book that I have coming out, it's coming out probably like this time next year. So I don't talk about it that much online, in part because I like to kind of keep some intrigue. So it's really only during events like this when I get asked directly that I'll like share stuff about it. So if people have questions, like definitely feel free to ask, but it'll be between, you know, us. And then eventually I think a lot more of this will come out as the book kind of goes into its promo cycle. But yeah, so my next book, it's a horror novel, and it's about this young queer kid named Mars, short for Marshall. They're gender fluid, and he uses like he, him pronouns throughout most of the book, so that's what I use when describing it. But Mars wakes up in the middle of the night, and his sister, his twin sister, is like suddenly home. She was at sleepaway camp, but she's suddenly home, and she's like trying to kill him abruptly. And in the ensuing fight between the two of them, he accidentally kills her. And the resulting like investigation leads to really nowhere. And so Mars is sort of left with the pieces of like what happened. And he retraces her steps back to the summer camp and realizes that she was being courted by this group of really popular girls who call themselves the Honeys. And it's this like beautiful sleepaway camp, and these girls are beautiful, and everything is beautiful and sunny and dreamy. But there's something wrong and like rotten about all of this. And Mars thinks it has to do with these girls, the Honeys, and this like beehive, this apiary that they keep behind their cabin, which produces, honey for the camp. And seems to have, kind of strange properties. And the honey harvest kind of coincides with people vanishing at the camp in the same way that his sister kind of vanished abruptly and then reappeared in his bedroom. So Mars has to figure out the connection between all of these things, as these girls, the Honeys, seem to be really welcoming, kind of too welcoming to a new person in their midst. And that's the book. That's the pitch for the Honeys. It's my next book. It's horror. It's sort of like Midsummer meets like the Heathers, or Heathers, if you've ever seen like that old classic or like the new musical. And it's very campy, and it's literally set at a sleepaway camp.
That sounds awesome. It sounds kind of creepy. I like it.
It sounds really creepy. Yeah.
Very creepy. Yeah. I'm worried because people like Bedazzled is this like fun, like very funny, like, zingy story. And then like the Honeys is like, oh, we're taking a turn into like darkness. And so I'm a little worried that some people are going to discover me, and then they're going to expect all of my books to be as like lighthearted as this one. And they're going to be very shocked when they pick up my next one.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, so actually I was curious because, so Rafi in Bedazzled, his mom, Evie, is, he can't live up to her expectations of art and what he can be or what he wants to be. So I read that you studied anthropology and neuroscience in college, and I was wondering if there's an Evie in your life that kind of you were doing that for, and you kind of, did a 180 all of a sudden and started writing.
That's a great question. What a probing question. Okay, Lois Lane, my goodness. Jeez, wow. Oh my God, if I was wearing a wig, it would have just scooted back on my head just a touch. Oh my God. What I will start with is that my mother is not the like canvas upon which like Evie was painted. Okay. My mom is super supportive of like all of my art. And in fact, it is probably the biggest crisis in our family that I wrote this book and made the mother the villain, because it really broke my mom's heart, because she was like, what did I do to you? And I was like, it's not about you. And like, she's lovely and has been nothing but supportive. So she's not the person in my life. But I did, weirdly though, growing up, I was a really artsy kid, and I had a bunch of art teachers that like would consistently look at like the stuff that I wanted to do and would just diminish it in a way that like was, I don't know, like really impactful in like a negative way. Like I remember when I was really into anime. I'm still really into anime. I love anime and manga, and all of my drawings like looked like anime and manga growing up. And that's what I really loved to do. And I remember I was in like an illustration class, and I'm a very good drawer, and we had assignments, and I would do really well on the assignments, but anytime we could do something freeform, like I would switch back to the thing that I liked the most. And I remember like Mr. Lobel, I'll never forget, came in, and he's like an art teacher, and he like looks at like what I'm doing, and like with like such disdain was like, oh, so I see you're still drawing these little fairy ladies, because I was like really into Sailor Moon at the time. And while that was just like one moment, it sort of encapsulates a lot of like my art education was like a little bit like dismissive of pop culture, in the same way that like, you know, many like publishing people are dismissive of like fan fiction, things that sort of exist in the realm of enjoying pop culture, which, you know, they've never been mutually exclusive. No one thinks those are mutually exclusive, right? Like we all agree that you can sort of have both. And that's why, you know, that's why the book is sort of this large conversation between Raffi and Evie, but also between like consumable, accessible cultural art and like high inaccessible modern art. Because that's a real conversation that takes place like every single day. And I talked to people, you know, I talked to everyone from people that are on the con floor, like selling hot dogs, to people who are in like the highest echelons of the art community, selling works for millions of dollars in like Singapore. Because I wanted to know what, you know, what they thought of cosplay and what they thought of this. And Evie is a distillation of that conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's an interesting character. Although I'm really happy. Well, let's not give away anything. But I don't know. Okay, let's move on.
I really like that too in the book. I mean, just like this, like, you know, the difference between arts and crafts and like high art, and how Evie was just so like belittling Raffi of like, and even though he's so skilled, and it's just like, who cares? Like he's doing something with his hands and it's amazing and people love it. Like it doesn't have to be, you know, this hoity-toity thing that Evie expects it to be. I just thought that was interesting. I hadn't like read anything, I feel like, that talked about that before either.
Right.
So
Yeah. And why we get a lot of like, you know, like we get a lot of dads being like, my son doesn't do ballet. But what we don't get is a lot of moms being like, my son doesn't do needlework. You know, like I just wanted to show a different sort of like parent-child relationship that wasn't like, you're going to go into STEM. Like this is the opposite of that, where it's like, you're going into pastels and watercolors. And Raffi's like, no, I want to go into like macaroni art. And like, that's the conversation. But, you know, it still rings with the same sort of like tension of like, here's a parent with expectations and here's a child who has, you know, their own dreams. And like, what do you do with your parents' legacy? And how do you sort of carve out a space for yourself? And that's why like the very first chapter is Raffi trying to get into this con, and he's sure that he's going to do a really good job. He's in this beautiful costume, but the person that checks him in looks at his ID and says, oh, I know your mother. She's very famous. And he still can't escape her shadow, even in a space that's his. And like, that's all, you know, that's what he's trying to do. So yeah, it was very fun to write.
Nice. Speaking of your writing style, I'm curious about, like, do you have a special place that you go, or a corner in your apartment that you work in, and do you listen to music or create playlists as you write too?
Yeah, I do like the whole playlist thing. I have a few songs that are sort of my tuning fork for when I sit down to write. So they're the song that sort of like gets me in. I only listen to it if I'm writing that particular book, never outside of it. And I will listen to it sort of when I sit down for like a session. And I have to do that because in before times, I travel a lot for like book events and tours and work. And also like, I love traveling anyways to like visit people. And so I'm never really in the same place, and I had to learn how to work really wherever. So all of the rituals that I have for writing have to sort of be as mobile as my lifestyle is. And so yeah, I'll do like a music thing. I also try to like eliminate distractions, because if I like see something out of the corner of my eye, I'll start to play with it. So if you ever see me writing in an airport, probably I'm facing like a corner or something, just so I'm not looking at anything else, because I get distracted very easily.
So do you have to avoid all of your craft supplies at home when you're writing, or do you have to like leave home completely to write?
Actually, you know what I found? So here, I have it with me right here. So I keep this baton with me at all times, so that if I'm thinking about something, instead of picking up my phone, I will just twirl this baton so that I'm not like doing other things with my hands. And so I feel bad for like my downstairs neighbors, because like probably 16 times during like a writing session, I will like think of something and I'll like toss the baton by accident. Something will like crash, or I'll just drop it out of the corner. So like, because I'm so fidgety, I I will keep things like within reach that are like for fidgeting rather than like a book or a phone, something that's going to kind of suck me out of the story that I'm writing. So this is it though. This is the baton that I will use. And I mention it all the time in like tweets and stuff like that, but it's a real thing. I'm not even making it up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those fidget spinners, and now there's like a new thing called like you pop these things. It's like
yes, yeah, those are great.
They're really good. They're really popular now. So let's see. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah. It says Tina would like to know: would you consider doing a graphic novel?
Absolutely. I would love to do a graphic novel. So like when people ask me like, what are your favorite books? Like what'd you read growing up? I'm always so embarrassed, and I used to like sort of avoid that question because I'm not a very strong reader, so I would avoid sort of like big books. Even like, books that weren't that big, but like if the font was small, I still wouldn't read them. But I loved graphic novels, and I loved comics, and I loved manga. And so I would love to write in that arena. I used to want to draw enough that I thought I was going to become like a graphic novelist, and maybe someday I'll do something in like the art realm, but to work with an artist and to sort of work with them to put the words behind like their imagery. Yeah, I would love to do that. I oftentimes think that Reverie, my first book, would make a really good graphic novel because it's so visual and so fantastical, and also it would be so expensive to make as a movie. I think like animation and a graphic novel, probably its best avenue for an adaptation outside of actually being written. But yeah, no, I would love to do something like that. Great question.
Well, here's another one. What crafts did you pick up during the pandemic?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I did some costuming, and I did some, I think the bulk of stuff that I did during the pandemic were like sort of small, like one-off costumes. I started a writer's salon in which I dress up every month in like a new theme. And so I've made like a lion, a lamb costume. I made like a flower costume. I literally recreated the like Midsummer May Queen costume for the last salon that I did in May. That's not too far out of my wheelhouse. I think the thing that was maybe the most difficult, well, I did a lot of bedazzling, obviously. I bedazzled many things in my apartment, but I also I really want to do more in like the like carpentry space. I don't have the tools for that in New York, but like whenever I go home to Connecticut, I will like refinish some furniture. Actually, this is something that I refinished in high school, and I like sanded it down and painted it, and then polyurethaned it. And you can't see it, but there's a table behind me that is my next like big woodworking project. So not really carpentry, really more like furniture restoration. Mm-hmm. But this is also a factor of the fact that I just moved, so I'm like looking at furniture all day long, and typically if I can't find something that I like, I'll try to make it myself, and that has mixed results. So we'll see how it goes.
So I had a question. You said you weren't like an avid reader when you were younger, and like big books used to intimidate you. It just seems kind of like what made you want to write? To be a writer of a book, that's like, I don't know. That's kind of like you're a man of words now, and like, like how did that not?
No, you're not wrong. Look, I have a hard time explaining this. Because I'm still really not a strong reader, and to the point that like, if you follow me on Twitter, like you probably see many typos, like people point them out to me all the time. I don't see them. I literally learn about these typos well after, and someone will like message me and be like, hey, I don't know if you noticed this. My poor copy editors, they have so much work to do. It's just, I tell stories. I don't proofread them. I don't read them. And I started writing because, language is much more than just, reading print, right? Like we are working in language when we are telling stories, when we're having events, when we're articulating answers, when we're debating rhetoric, all of that stuff, performance, like that's still the use of language. And I'm very visual and very auditory. And so, a lot of like my writing comes from being able to kind of hear pacing in words and how words fit together and sort of what they feel like when you say them. And it's not so much what they look like on a page. But yeah, no, the whole reading thing has always been like a weird disconnect for me, but I've gotten better. I mean, I had to I had to get better for education and things like that too. And anthropology is like a largely written science. Like anthropology is sort of reported via like long form essays too. So, I've gotten over my fear of reading things that are really long, but there's a reason I never read Dune. This book is huge. I would never pick this up willingly. And now I'm sort of trying to get better at it. I've also discovered a lot of it has to do with like focus too. As we've discussed, I'm not a very focused person too. And that probably is, something to do with the fact that I, need to talk to a doctor because I, probably am on the spectrum of ADD or something like that. But I just never pursued it because I was always a really strong student growing up. So it just never really like factored in like a way that required intervention. So now as an adult, I'm like, oh, I can't read. I can like barely spell. I can't focus. Like maybe I should talk to somebody. But you're right. Like clearly I've sort of found my way into this anyways, which goes to show you if like, don't count yourself out if you're not a strong reader or if you have a really hard time sitting down and like getting through a book. Like you could definitely still write one.
You could still tell a story if you have a story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
So everybody that's watching, please feel free to drop your questions into the comments because we still have a little bit of time. But while we wait for some more, I hope I didn't just close this. Okay, good. Sorry, I clicked something on the computer. While we wait for any comments, I wanted to play a little game with you, Ryan, if you're up for it.
I love games. Absolutely.
It's sort of a would you rather or like quick fire question game. And the first couple are kind of book related, especially the very first one. If you've read, I won't ruin anything, but if you've read the book, you'll probably recognize this. So, Ryan, would you rather get trapped in quicksand or trapped in a whirlpool?
Oh God! Oh my God! Is this a reference to the whirlpool conversation?
Yes.
Oh my God! My biggest nightmare is a whirlpool. Quicksand all the way. I know how to get out of quicksand. To this day, like I think about whirlpools and I feel like I need to hold on to something because what happens? You get whirled to the bottom of the ocean. Where do they go? Like it just makes no sense to me. I would hate that.
I never thought of that. And when I read that, I was like, fearful for my life. I was like, now I can't.
They make no sense to me. So absolutely, I'm in the quicksand camp. I know how to get out of quicksand. I've read a lot about that, but no, I have no idea what I would do. If I was in a whirlpool, I would truly just be like, this is it. My hands are tied. It's up to you, Poseidon.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Would you rather attend San Diego Comic-Con or an Anime Expo event?
Oh, that is hard. Oh my gosh. Oh God. So I'm going to say San Diego Comic-Con because I was just in San Diego visiting a friend for like my first real trip in like a year and a half. And San Diego was beautiful, so beautiful. And I had such a good time. And I've always wanted to go to San Diego Comic-Con because it's like the big sibling to like New York Comic-Con, which I've been to. And then I went up to like LA and I like absolutely love LA and was like, I want to live in LA now. And so I would like really do anything to get back to California. And to go to these, I mean, I would love to go to Anime Expo as well, but I'll say San Diego Comic-Con.
Woo! How about anime or manga? If you have to choose one.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say anime. I'm gonna say anime. You know why? Because in Sailor Moon, in the manga, they don't have the beautiful transformation sequences that made that show so iconic that I spent years perfecting as a child in my living room pretending that I was a Sailor Scout. And so I have to go, I would be remiss if I didn't give anime this one.
What about favorite anime?
Sailor Moon is my all-time favorite. I literally have a tattoo, and it's like the thing that like has made me me. So I have to say Sailor Moon. But if I had to do recent anime, I thought Demon Slayer was absolutely superb. And my favorite anime of probably the past 10 years would be Puella Magi Madoka Magica, so Magical Girl Madoka in English. And it's like an extension of the magical girl genre, but like a dark unpacking of the consequences of what happens when we make girls save the world. And that I rewatch it every year. I just finished a rewatch of it, so if you haven't checked, if you don't know it, but you really like anime and magical girl stuff, and you're feeling brave, check it out.
I'm taking notes, just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have one more I want to ask you because we'll have to wrap up pretty soon. This is one that a colleague of mine has been asking people lately, and I think it's funny. Would you rather have the body of a 25-year-old at age 50 or have the wisdom of a 50-year-old at age 25?
Oh, the body. Absolutely the body. I mean, it depends on the 25-year-old, but I think that as I got older, I was talking to a friend recently, I'm not, I feel it. I really do feel it. I feel like after 25, my body was time to crumble. And so I'm going to go with that. And you know what? I say that because the wisdom part of it, I'm trying to get rid of wisdom. I just want to be a silly I want to go to my cabin in the woods. I want to carve birds. I don't need wisdom to do that. I actually would I don't want to know more about the ways of the world. I want to know less. And I just want to live in my books and, have fun. And the simpler, the better in my mind. I think there's a lot of merit to being, especially after this year. My gosh, I could do with a little bit of vapidity.
I love that. That's funny. Well, I think we're out of time. I mean, we've only got a few minutes left. So, and we haven't gotten any more questions, which is shocking because, I'm sorry. Tina asked, will you go to San Diego Comic-Con this year?
I would love to. I would love to be invited as an author, but I don't know how much author stuff they do, but even if they don't, I'll probably end up going. I mean, I'm going to New York Comic-Con this year, and I'm so excited about that. So yeah, I would love to go to San Diego.
Yeah, they definitely do a lot of author stuff. I feel like all the publishers are at San Diego Comic-Con, but this year's a little different. They're doing something in November, so I don't quite know what that'll look like and who will be there.
Yeah. So someday, if you are I'm sure I will tweet about it. So if you are there, I will be there at some point, and I will definitely make a big announcement. But I may go in costume. You may not even recognize me.
Ooh.
Okay, looks like we have another question. Hoping for Nash. Ooh, was that a real sneak peek for the 4th?
It might be. I will be so honest at this point. I'm not sure which book I've been greenlit to do for my 4th book. I have a few different ideas, but the one that I want to do the most is it's in the realm of a supernatural cat and mouse thriller set in New York City.
All right, we'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for being here with us. And thanks to everybody that joined us for this conversation. We hope that you enjoyed listening to us and Ryan chat about his books and all the things that he likes to do. And we would also just like to thank our donors one more time, the Library Foundation, and of course our behind-the-scenes staff and everybody for supporting the library.
And remember, many of our libraries are currently open for limited services, so you can visit us in person or online to check out all of these great books. Please make sure to join us for our next Your Author program on Friday, June 25th with children's author Susie Hicks, streaming on the library's YouTube and Facebook channels. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.